Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining today's presentation on fleet procurement of medium and heavy-duty electric vehicles. We're going to go ahead and get started. Again, for those that have just joined, quick little housekeeping. If you are having difficulty hearing us or video or viewing the presentation, please use the chat box to message us. We'll be monitoring that through the webinar and be able to go ahead and respond accordingly. So everyone is muted during the webinar, and this webinar is being recorded, so we will be posting it online. The Q&A is at the end, but if you do have questions for those presenters during the presentations, feel free to go ahead and use that questions box. We'll be asking the presenters after their webinar or their presentation what your questions, so we'll be able to get that in-time feedback. The webinar the recording will be uploaded to the West Coast Electric Fleet site at the end of this presentation. So if you do want to view it again or send it to colleagues, please use that West Coast Electric Fleet website. Just a brief background on FBC. We're one of many partners that brings this webinar to you, part of the West Coast Electric Fleet Initiative. That includes the Pacific Coast Collaborative, so that's agreements between the province of British Columbia, the state of Washington, state of California, and the state of Oregon as well. The initiative is supporting fleets and expanding their use of zero-emission vehicles. And as part of that, there's 4 commitments, volunteer, no penalty-based commitments that fleets can sign on as a West Coast Electric Fleet pledgee: the on-ramp, the highway, the express, and the new diamond lane commitment levels. So a commitment level for everyone, whether or not you're just looking at getting zero-emission vehicles in your fleet, or if you're committing to 10, 20, or even 100% of vehicle procurement being zero-emission vehicles. If you are interested in joining the West Coast Electric Fleet's pledges, you can visit our website and sign up online. There are more than 90 fleet partners that have already taken the pledge, and as this map indicates, they are in a variety of geographic areas, and as well as a variety of different backgrounds, whether that's private fleets, state departments, regional governments, public institutions such as universities or utilities, as well as First Nations groups. The West Coast Electric Fleet's website also has a toolkit that has a variety of resources for fleets, not just, ranging from business calculators to reports and studies on the benefits of going to zero-emission vehicles. There are also a variety of case studies from a variety of small to medium and even large-sized fleets, including public transit authorities, on the reasons why they went electric and the cost savings that they incurred. So again, sign the pledge, explore the toolkit. You can visit us at the westcoastelectricfleets.com. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself, Ryan Davis, there, or Charlotte Argue, my colleague at the Fraser Basin Council. So today's speakers, we have Amy Sidwell from the City of Vancouver, Yasna Tomek from CalSTART, and Evan Spear from the state of California. So I'm gonna hand over the presentation now to Amy. If you again have any questions, feel free to chat us, or if you have questions for the speakers, use that question box.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. My name is, can everyone see the screen okay? Or Ryan, can you see it okay?
We're seeing it clearly.
Okay,
thanks,
great.
Amy.
Thanks. So hi, everyone. My name is Amy Sidwell. I manage the City of Vancouver's fleet of vehicles and equipment, and I'm here today to talk to you about how we're electrifying our medium and heavy duty fleet. So for the agenda, I'll just talk briefly about what our goals are, corporate goals are in Vancouver, and get into kind of what are the tools and initiatives we're doing in our fleet for our green fleet strategy and what our current status is. And then I'll get into more of the specifics about our medium and heavy duty electric truck procurement, and then talk about some of the parallel and future initiatives that we've got going on. So as you may or may not know, Vancouver is a C40 city. So that's a group of cities from around the world that are committed to addressing climate change. And we have a few supporting strategies that are helping support this commitment. First, our internal fleet, and as part of our Green City Action Plan, we have a goal to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 30% from 2007 levels by 2020. And then more recently, we've developed this renewable city strategy, which has an overall target to reduce our emissions 100%, or have us transition to 100% renewable energy use by 2050. For our fleet in particular, we've got about 1,850 vehicle and equipment assets in our fleet. And there's kind of three pieces that we're doing to help us achieve our emission-related goals. One is electrifying the fleet. So over the next 5 years, we're hoping to have 330 electric vehicles in our fleet, 120 of those being medium and heavy-duty trucks, and 110 light-duty vehicles. We're also looking at how we're fueling our fleet, so making sure that wherever we can, we're transitioning to renewable, biologically derived fuel content. So we're just out to market right now for our fuel contract with the municipal buyers group to try and see what new fuel options there might be out there for us. And then finally, how we're utilizing the fleet. So we have GPS and telematics in our vehicles, and looking at reporting and working with our operations groups to see how they can make their fleets use less fuel. And then we kind of have some supporting pieces. So looking externally to the marketplace, we want to really work with our partners like Fraser Basin Council, BC Hydro, other municipalities to make sure that we're helping increase adoption and market availability. And then we're also wanting to become a center of excellence for maintenance and training for electric vehicles. At the City of Vancouver, we have about 100 tradespeople that work for our branch, not all mechanics, about 60 are mechanics. So we just want to make sure that we are setting them up to do maintenance on these vehicles so that we're supported for our needs, and then also establishing a broader marketplace for technicians in the Lower Mainland to support the broader needs. Our current state, we have 110 electric vehicles by the end of this month. So we're just waiting for another 20 that are coming in right now. We've got light duty vehicles, primarily cars, motorcycles, utility vehicles, and equipment such as Zambonis and forklifts. So lots of different types of vehicles. We're really excited to have the largest municipal electric vehicle fleet in Canada. So we're really hoping to build on that over the next few years with our medium and heavy duty fleet. And then we've also got some hybrid vehicles as well, 56 hybrid vehicles, and they're used across the city. So we use them in police, fire, parks, engineering services, and also in our car share program. And then now just talking about kind of that 120 vehicles that we want to expand our fleet to EV with over the next 5 years. Our medium and heavy duty truck fleet is the largest emitters in our fleet. So I think they make up about 18% in terms of quantity, but they make up 40% of the emissions of our fleet. So they're really a key area for us to focus on. So over the next 5 years, we want to replace this 120 vehicles, and they're class 3 through class 8. And there's a wide variety of applications they're used for: service trucks, cube bodies for delivering equipment or supplies to different sites, flat decks, refuse trucks, aerial trucks. So there's a really wide variety, which is kind of made it a bit more complex in terms of making sure that we're getting chassis that are going to support all of those auxiliary equipment needs that are going on the vehicles. And then with this procurement, we also had some supporting objectives that we wanted to achieve. So making sure that that local maintenance and training was available, making sure that charging is accessible and smart. So trying to find charging that would be non-proprietary if possible, and also a lot of our sites are maxed out from an energy capacity standpoint, so trying to look at more smart charging options. Also building resiliency into charging, so when we have some kind of emergency or the power supply goes down in the city, what are we doing to make sure that we have supply there for our vehicles to continue to operate? We also want to make sure that we're connecting chassis and body manufacturers, just because it's a new industry. A lot of our bodybuilders that are local aren't as familiar with this technology, so making sure that we have them connected to the OEMs so that they can work together and get us the vehicles that we need for our operations. And finally, understanding the financial implications as we move to electric vehicles and how it's going to change over the next few years and how we're going to fund it. In terms of our approach that we took for procurement, we ended up doing a request for expression of interest. Because the market is kind of emerging, we felt that it was a little, a bit of a softer approach, because if we were to issue a request for proposal, as an example, we're indicating to the market that we definitely would like to go ahead with one of these options, whereas by doing the request for expression of interest, it was a little less formalized. It doesn't necessarily have to lead to a contract. So we wanted to make sure it was more open and get the information to us that we're looking for. So in that RFEOI, we were looking for supply and delivery of the vehicle chassis, maintenance, parts supply and servicing, and then charging station supply and support. And we had the key areas of focus that you see listed there around regulatory compliance for Canadian motor vehicle safety standards, making sure that we understood what configurations were available and what performance we can expect from the chassis, the service level expectations from the vendors and their experience, and what entities they'll be working with and how much experience they have as well, their availability of vehicles and delivery timelines, and then the pricing structure. I've included a link there to our bid document, and I believe this presentation is going to get posted, so if anyone wants to take a look at our bid document, they can. So we put the bid out in late November, and it closed in February. We actually got a request for an extension, so it ended up closing in February. And I can't actually say too much about the submissions that we received because we're still in the evaluation stages, but we were really excited because we did end up receiving multiple submissions for all the vehicle classes, Class 3 through Class 8. So we're just trying to look through those and looking at those areas of focus that I was mentioning on the last slide and seeing which ones will provide best value for us and are they worthy of kind of moving to a further procurement. And the good thing about the request for expression of interest, we included wording in there to give us the ability to proceed directly to a further procurement or straight to a contract negotiation, and the ability to award a contract to multiple vendors. We generally do our contracts on a non-exclusive nature, so if other technology does come out on the market in parallel, we are able to work with those vendors as well. And so over the next coming months, as we have more information available, I'll definitely share it with the group if people are interested. And then finally, I just want to talk about some parallel and future initiatives that we have that are kind of supporting. We've got 6 Mitsubishi e-canters that we've pre-ordered, are fully electric Class 5 vehicles. And then we've got some upcoming market engagement that we're planning. One that's not listed on here is we're just going to be doing a request for applications for additional light-duty vehicles, looking at new technologies and hybrid systems and retrofits, training initiatives, as I mentioned before, electrical engineering and infrastructure support, and then pilot proposals for some. We have a lot of local technology expertise in the city, so we're just trying to work with some of those groups to try and test out their technologies and help them advance their products in the market. We're also trying to advance policies, so working with the provincial and federal governments to look at zero-emission vehicle mandates to see how it can help ensure that we have vehicles available when we want to purchase them. And we've also been putting in some funding applications to try and offset some of the additional upfront capital cost. And then finally, we've also set up an EV expert panel with local institutions, learning institutions, municipalities, utilities, BC Hydro, to try and make sure that we understand what all the challenges and barriers people are seeing and how we can move the market ahead most quickly. And that is it. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Amy. So yeah, we had some good questions asked for that presentation. Again, if you do have questions for the speakers, please use the questions box that's going to be located on the right-hand side panel there. So our next speaker is Yasna Tomic. She's with CalSTART. Yasna, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Great. You should be sharing your screen here shortly.
All right. Show my screen. All right. Well, I think it's starting up. If you can let me know when you do see. Okay.
Yeah, we see it clearly.
Okay, great. Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody, and I'm happy to be presenting here. So what I wanted to do, I actually have quite a lot of slides, but my hope was to give everybody an introduction or a review, rather, of what type of medium heavy duty vehicles exist right now and which ones will be coming to the market. And then a little bit on incentive structures, at least incentive structures that are available in California that can help support this burgeoning market. So with that, let me just start out with a very brief intro, hopefully just on CalSTART. We're a nonprofit clean transportation technology coalition that is headquartered in California, but we work throughout the country in a couple of different states. I'm trying to advance the slides here, sorry. And we work across 4 different commercialization initiatives: cars, buses, trucks, and fuels. Within that, I would say that the buses and trucks specifically are our largest focus, and majority of projects that we handle are on buses and trucks. Therefore, that's what I will be focusing in this presentation here today, just to inform you mostly about the market, the state of the market in terms of medium and heavy duty transportation. So a lot of what I'll be talking today is based on a document that I highly recommend to anybody that is interested in the progress of the medium heavy duty market. And that is California Air Resources Board 3-year investment plan, which we helped develop. And it is available online for anybody to look at, and it addresses zero emission vehicles, low NOx vehicles, and efficiency, and builds around the concept of beachhead markets. And what that means is, an example of a beachhead market is a first application market where vehicles or any technology would appear, in this case, vehicles, and then using a similar drivetrain, component sizing, scale, it would then expand to secondary and tertiary applications. That really leverages the supply capabilities, enables price reduction in additional applications. For the zero emission beachhead pathway specifically, what that means is, I just wanted to show you an example. So the buses today are really sort of the beachhead market for zero emission medium heavy duty vehicles. And then from buses on, we see something parallel to that. On the off-road side, we see forklifts. From that, again, the next beachhead markets are battery electric vehicle delivery, and then, sorry, I'm clicking along here, extended range delivery and electrification of terminals and facilities. Overall, this gives you a picture of how really the market overall can leverage and build upon existing vehicles and existing successes of the battery electric market. So talking about buses, they're about 23, and I think this slide is even a little bit old at this point. They're probably a little more than 23 zero emission bus products across 10 different bus markets. So it's fairly mature, and many of you have probably seen battery electric buses deployed around you, definitely in the states that we're talking to here specifically. Next, after buses, there has been an upsurge really in electric school buses that are emerging, and I'm just listing a couple of examples, more than a couple that exist here. And I will say that we are anticipating in this year another 1 or 2 manufacturers to come out with electric school buses as well. So I thought that was worth pointing out. While the rest of my presentation here were focused a little bit more on medium and heavy duty trucks, is an interesting segment that I think the fleets that are on this call and monitoring this will be interested in. So this slide provides an overview of a variety, and I'm glad that Amy had shown sort of the e-canter a truck, which I will have an example of. And with this, I'm quickly going to go through some of the other examples a little bit slide by slide, just to show you how robust and how hot this market is specifically right now. For example, a new entry is the zero emission change vehicle for electric delivery and shuttle in class 4. It's built in China, but eventually will be assembled in the US, and more models are expected to come along with this vehicle. The medium duty delivery is also moving. Here are a couple of examples of Workhorse that is working with UPS amongst others. After that, a very interesting development, Volvo electric truck is expected on the road in Europe in 2019 and builds off of the core bus electric powertrain that Volvo has had for many, many years. And so it signals plans to enter North America market very soon as well, which is super exciting because this is a major supplier and OEM, right? So Daimler Fuso, as Amy had shown the example, e-canter, this was the version 1 in pre-production. Version 2 is coming in 2019, and there are commitments to continuous improvement across this driveline. eFuso's Vision 1, here's another example of a 217-mile range, 11-ton capacity, market possible in 2021 in Japan and US and Europe. And that's with Daimler Trucks. Isuzu also is expected to launch an e-truck in 2018 based on its N series with a 100-kilometer range announced and aimed at the urban market for delivery and refuse. And this is a very popular vehicle amongst many fleets. And then Volkswagen really has announced across its truck and bus sets a full technology roadmap that I'll show you in a couple of examples here, but it includes electric vehicles for medium heavy duty distribution trucks and city buses, and it really creates sort of a joint modular e-drivetrain. And then working with Navistar and Class 5-6 e-truck with Volkswagen together, possibly releasing a vehicle in 2019. So here's Volkswagen's example of e-Crafter, which is expected, which was launched in 2017 in Europe, with a 129 electric mile range, working on using a 100-kilowatt electric motor. Along those lines, in Brazil, there's a medium-duty electric truck, Volkswagen truck used for e-delivery. And MAN has an e-tractor, which is a 250-kilowatt electric motor driven vehicle with lithium-ion batteries. So pilot production in 2017 and 18, and then series production expected in 2021. And then Cummins, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, engine maker, has also announced a class 6 through 8 electrified powertrain for class 6 through 8 delivery and transit buses. Very, very exciting development that was announced late in the fall of 2017. And then many of you have probably seen and heard rather of the Tesla Semi unveiling with a 300 to 500 mile range, which remains to be seen how it will work out, and with a price of between $150,000 and $180,000. Some of the early movers are Walmart, Loblaw, and others. 2019 or earlier for production. Okay, so now with those, I hope that gives you a sense of how many different vehicles and models are coming in the medium heavy duty sector. I wanted to kind of talk about, especially in California, something that has been helping move these trucks to fleets. And that's the California HVIP program, which is High Efficiency Vehicle Incentive Program. And it tackles one of the greatest barriers to purchasing, which is the higher price tag, right? Upfront cost of these vehicles. So what is HVIPs? It's a streamlined first come first serve voucher incentive. No proposals are necessary, and electric, hybrid, and fuel cell and low NOx natural gas trucks and buses are available. It's been operating for over 8 years now and released over 4,000 plus vouchers. Here's an example of some of the voucher amounts, which are not insignificant. Again, this is for everybody in California, but there are some other markets in New York and City of Chicago that are using similar approaches that you can look online. The point here is just to show that the amounts are not insignificant. I mean, just looking at an example of a truck in the 26 to 33 GVW range, you can get 95,000 or 110,000 right off the price of the vehicle at the point of purchase. And then if you went onto this website, this is just a list of some of the vehicles that are available for purchasing with the vouchers. If you go to the website, you can see the most current list available. Even if you're not in California, I highly recommend it. It gives you a good overview of what vehicles are available on the market for purchasing, not only with these vouchers, but just in general. So it's a good kind of listing of vehicles. The new thing that is happening is that infrastructure will be also incentivized. So you can get $30,000 per vehicle for a battery electric vehicle towards infrastructure specifically. And there's some rules around that, but that's a good new development that we have heard from many fleets needs to be addressed, and we understand why. And then it can be combined with other incentives that exist, again, in California, the Moyer funding, the Prop 1B, et cetera. So I won't dwell on this because it's really California specific. Here's a list of the various manufacturers that currently are covered under the HVIP program or that have vehicles in the HVIP program, and it's expanding every day. And here are some, vehicle pictures, again, some of the examples that do get covered with the HVIP vouchers. That's in one class, and then the BYD zero emission trucks, for example, in another class. And then talking about the BYD example, I wanted to show an example from Loblaw from Canada, a major food and pharmacy company, Loblaw, launching BYD Class 8 trucks as a start of shift to 100% electric. Very exciting news, I think, not only for Canada, but just overall for delivery of products in an all-electric mode. And here are a few other examples, and as Amy was mentioning, the need of, bucket trucks for utilities, or Autocar, which has the refuse truck, the Hino, and the XL hybrids also. Those are hybrid examples. So this chart here just shows an inflection point in terms of projected annual HVIP demand, where we saw in FY 16-17 one inflection point, and now in FY 18-19 another inflection point. So this gives you an idea of what the projected annual HVIP demand is. These vouchers have been extremely helpful, the first adopters and just fleets that are trying to really do the right thing and address cleaner transportation within their own fleet. So with that, I just wanted to summarize and say that medium and heavy duty vehicles are definitely coming to the faster, much faster than was anticipated. There will be a phase-in approach that will be different than we have seen with cars. It'll be expanding somewhat in waves based on growing tech viability, duty cycle, emerging business cases. And something to think about both in regionally and then statewide or region-wide across this Pacific Coast Collaborative is how do we build out supporting mechanisms, whether they're regulatory incentives, inducements, and policies, to be aligned with some of the beachhead timing and segmentation so that we can really help support this growing market. And with that, I will be happy to entertain any questions that you have, either right after or follow up with me. Thank you.
Thanks, Yasna. Yeah, so our next speaker is Evan Spear with the state of California. Evan, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yep, and you should have video controls here shortly.
All right. So I think I'm up and running. Can you see the my screen?
Yep, we can see it clearly.
Perfect. So thank you for inviting me to this webinar, and thank you to those who have joined and are participating. Again, my name is Evan Spear. I'm the Chief of the Office of Fleet and Asset Management with the Department of General Services. I really want to, my role in this webinar is to provide you with our experiences in the procurement of medium and heavy duty electric vehicles. I'm a firm believer in learning from others' successes and failures, and we've had both of them. And so first, I think it's important to give you some background on our efforts for context. So our efforts in the procurement of zero-emission vehicles really started in 2012 with Governor's executive order at that time, which solely pertained to light-duty vehicles. And we defined, at the time, we defined light-duty vehicles with anything below an 8,500 gross vehicle weight rating. The ZEV adoption goals were 10% of all new light-duty purchases annually until the year 2020, when, as you can see from that chart, it jumps up significantly to 25%. In the governor's executive order, he specifically tasked the Department of General Services, which is more or less the business manager for state government here in California. And there are specifically two divisions within DGS who are responsible for fulfilling the goals of the governor's mandate. One is our procurement division. They are responsible for executing statewide contracts that all state agencies use, and as well as local government agencies. So local government agencies within the state of California are able to purchase off of our contracts that we set up. And then the Office of Fleet and Asset Management, which I oversee, we are the control agency and policy setting agency for the state's fleet. Our state fleet has about 50,000 assets in it. About 20,000 of those assets, 20 to 22,000 of those assets are light duty. Another, 10 to 15,000 are medium and heavy duty assets, and the remainder are equipment. So both sides, on the policy side for the Office of Fleet and Asset Management, we're tasked with taking the executive order, turning it into statewide policy, operationalizing it and turning it into statewide policy. And our procurement division was tasked with making sure that these vehicles were available for state agencies to purchase. We couldn't mandate something that they couldn't go out and buy. So I'm really happy to say that we've been extremely successful in meeting our mandate so far. Over the first 3 years of implementation, we've surpassed that 10% goal. In the latest year, 2017, we hit almost just shy of 25%. So we are on schedule to meet that 2020 goal and exceed it. In addition, our procurement division has been able to supply a contract that has 9 zero-emission vehicles, battery electric, 1 fuel cell vehicle, and plug-in hybrid vehicles available on contract. And as no good deed goes unpunished, we've been rewarded with a new target of 50% by 2025. I would also say that with meeting these goals, currently we have a little over 700 zero-emission vehicles in our fleet, and that is strictly battery electric, plug-in hybrid, and about 30 fuel cell vehicles. We also have some new initiatives that have been placed on our medium and heavy duty, fleet assets, which I'll cover a little bit later. So in 2015, because of the successes that we saw in the light duty arena, we're doing such a good job that we decided to try and expand our electric vehicle adoption to the medium and heavy duty categories. And we found success, sort of, again. We're able to go out and procure or execute contracts for 9 different medium and heavy duty vehicles. They are currently on statewide contract and available for all departments, state agencies to procure or purchase off of. There are 6 battery electric trucks, 1 plug-in hybrid truck, and 2 plug-in hybrid vans. The 2 plug-in hybrid vans are Class 2, so for most fleets fall into kind of the light duty category. Because our definition was 8,500 GVWR, I've included those in the slideshow. But you can see I've provided a few examples of some of the heavy-duty vehicles that we've been able to put on statewide contracts. So the BYD T5 cabin chassis, their T7 cabin chassis. And if you start looking at the vehicle contract prices, if you start off there, you get that initial sticker shock. But I would also keep in mind what Yasna, our previous presenter, was talking about with the HVIB credits. If this vehicle qualifies for $90,000 to $100,000 in credits, it's a pretty good deal. EVI M2 cabin chassis, we're able to put on contract. It's a upfitting company that was based out of Stockton. The EVI F450, again, an upfitted F450 plug-in hybrid. And then VIA Motors, both a passenger and cargo van, both upfits as well to plug-in hybrid. So with this, despite the successes of getting these vehicles on contract, we also experienced significant challenges along the way, and honestly have ultimately failed in our goal of getting these vehicles purchased and deployed into the state fleet. So I really wanted to share and focus on some of the challenges that we experienced, share those with you all so you don't make the same mistakes that we did. So these challenges fell into kind of 3 different steps of the procurement process. The first one was kind of our pre-solicitation analysis. Initially, when we had the idea of expanding the offerings to medium and heavy duty vehicles, we approached it in a kind of field of dreams manner. If we put them on contract, people would buy them. It wasn't really our responsibility to find the best use case for them. It was just to make them available, and if we did make them available, our fleet managers would go out there and start procuring them. That wasn't the case and hasn't been the case. I think it was a little naive thinking on our part. Medium and heavy duty vehicles, as many of you know, have very different use cases. A lot of them require very specific specifications during the procurement process, and a lot of those specifications depend solely on that specific use case that the vehicle is going to be procured for. We also didn't do a lot of outreach to our fleet managers. We were focused on light-duty vehicles, not as much on medium and heavy-duty. So we didn't do a lot of education and outreach with our fleet managers, which I think really affected us on the back end once we put these on contract in terms of actual procurement purchasing off of the contract. The second phase where we experienced some significant challenges was during the solicitation. A lot of the companies that were bidding on the contract were relatively new to bidding on statewide contract on any government contract. And if there are local governments on the line, I'm sure many of you have fairly rigid procurement requirements. As the state of California, I know we do. And so we tried to take the light duty solicitation, which was geared towards dealers within California, and apply that to the medium and heavy duty solicitation, and that just didn't work. Some of the bidders lacked the proper documentation. For example, we require a dealer license to be able to bid, to be a responsive bidder on our contracts, and some of the manufacturers of these vehicles did not have a dealer license and had to kind of scramble to set up relationships with local dealers to source these vehicles. In addition, we require customer references to be able to ensure that it's a reputable and established business. Well, some of these manufacturers are so new, companies are so new, that they didn't have a lot of customer references, and we ultimately had to remove that requirement from the solicitation. In all, we went out to bid 3 different times, and on as the saying goes, the third time was the charm, and we were able to get these vehicles on statewide contract. And then we got to, once we put it out there, we realized none of our state fleet agencies were purchasing off of it. We have seen some purchases from local government agencies, but our state fleets haven't purchased anything in the medium and heavy duty categories. And I think that's a result of a few things that I talked about and touched on earlier. One, not reaching out to fleet managers early, engaging them. 2, we don't have a mandate in the medium and heavy duty space from the executive level. So it's not a priority for these fleet managers. A lot of these vehicles require a significant amount of time for the upfitting of them, and fleet managers did not want to wait that extra time. They wanted the vehicle, and they wanted the vehicle quickly. There was a high upfront cost, despite the rebates that you could get as long as you qualified from HFIB. A lot of departments just saw the sticker price, and we did a poor job of educating fleet managers and departments about the rebates and the ROI that they could see from purchasing these vehicles. Another factor was manufacturer instability. 2 of the companies that successfully bid on products on this last contract are no longer able to supply them. Via Motors no longer supplies that vehicle through those vans through our contract, and EVI was their inventory was eventually purchased by First Priority Green Fleet, which led to a bunch of confusion from fleet managers on whether it was available, those vehicles are still available or not available to be able to purchase. And ultimately, just kind of a low customer knowledge base, fleet manager knowledge base of the capabilities of these vehicles, and how those capabilities fit in with their various use cases within their respective fleets. So with any good failure, there were quite a few lessons learned from this process that I think are extremely valuable for anyone thinking of purchasing medium and heavy-duty vehicle, zero-emission vehicles. So our first kind of lesson learned and recommendation is to engage end users and fleet managers early and often. I think it is absolutely critical to get their buy-in on the functionality of these vehicles, to develop a well-laid plan for the deployment of these vehicles. We did that in the light duty category, and we've been extremely successful. We didn't do it in medium and heavy duty, and we weren't successful. I think it's extremely important to tailor solicitation to specific opportunities for ZEB adoption. I was extremely impressed by the City of Vancouver's kind of foresight and keeping things soft and being able to make sure that it's flexible, but also being able to look at what comes back and being able to tailor that to their specific needs. A third lesson learned and recommendation is to try to stick to established manufacturers. You know, it's difficult if you do a lot of work to get a vehicle on contract. You know, you may purchase some of those vehicles, and if that company goes out of business, how are you going to continue to service them? Does that service network go away? And that's a legitimate risk. Conduct research on the manufacturer prior to award to determine kind of financial stability, see if they're a major player in the space, and if you believe that they're going to be around for a while. And then the last lesson learned and recommendation that I have is to, wherever possible, aggregate purchasing volume. One of the things that we've seen is in the light duty space is that we're not able to achieve significant discounts on the zero emission vehicles that we're putting on contract. Some discounts, but not significant. However, in our discussions with medium and heavy duty manufacturers, there's much more opportunity to aggregate purchasing, to achieve discounts on aggregated purchasing contracts. Just because a lot of the manufacturers are smaller, they can achieve discounts through suppliers of parts if they know that they're going to be able to make these vehicles and sell them. So those are kind of some of our lessons learned and recommendations that we have. My last slide is kind of looking to the horizon and how do we as a state take these lessons learned and apply them in future initiatives. And we're doing just that in two specific initiatives. One, we are working with local governments within the state of California to try and set up a statewide contract for electric buses. We've realized that a lot of the use cases for these medium and heavy duty electric vehicles actually fits better with smaller municipalities with set routes, limited, range needs, especially for buses. And we've also heard from a lot of local municipalities within the state of California that either they just don't have the resources to do a procurement, technical knowledge, the engineering staff to do a procurement, or just don't have the knowledge, the ability. They haven't gone through one of these before. So we as a state have stepped in and said, well, we have that technical ability, we have the engineering expertise, and we have the resources to get this done. And if this is going to be a value to local governments within the state of California, and if we can achieve some discounts based on these contracts, then we should do it. So right now we are doing outreach to local governments within the state of California. We are conducting market research, and we are coordinating with different electric bus manufacturers to see what is available and what our functional needs will be. The second item that's on the horizon for us is adding that mandate in the medium and heavy duty space to really kind of get that extra push for adoption within the state fleet. Assembly Bill 739, which was passed last year, adds a 15% heavy duty purchasing requirement by 2025, and that ramps up to 30% in 2030. So we are going to take our own lessons learned from our previous procurement and fix the things that need to be fixed and have a strategic rollout to meet the terms of that legislation. And with that, my presentation is over. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or I can answer them at the end of this webinar. Thank you.
Great, thanks Evan for that. So again, our speakers today were Amy Sidwell, Yasna Tomic, and Evan Spear. Before we get to the Q&A, we're just going to go briefly through a couple of opportunities, upcoming opportunities for fleets. The first, and Yasna already spoke to this, is the rebate vouchers available through the California HVIP program. And conversely, BC also has a similar program called the Specialty Use Vehicle Incentive Initiative program that offers purchase rebates of $2,000 to $50,000, depending on the size of the vehicle as well as the battery. The program is running until March 1st, 2020. There's a variety of vehicle categories that are available, including forklifts, medium and heavy duty vehicles, as well as airport and port specialty vehicles. An upcoming event that might be of interest to participants in the webinar is the Green Transportation Summit and Expo. That's April 17th in the Greater Tacoma Convention Center. There's going to be a variety of opportunities to test drive or ride and drive on medium and heavy duty vehicles, as well as hear speakers that present on the topic. And again, we're going to leave this page up here, but do join the West Coast Electric Fleets Initiative by signing the pledge or exploring the toolkit. You can also sign up for a monthly newsletter that we send out. And if you do have any questions, feel free to contact myself or my colleague, Charlotte. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the questions. And there were a variety. If we don't get to your questions today, we will send those out to the speakers. This webinar is being recorded. That will be uploaded to the West Coast Electric Fleet's website after this presentation is over, so you can rewatch or share with your colleagues as necessary. So our first question comes from Paul. Are you able to disclose, I guess this is a question for Amy, are you able to disclose where the proponents that submitted interest are from geographically?
No, we're not able to say. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is also for Amy. What was the cost of the Mitsubishi e-Canter?
I don't have that information in front of me. So that was it's a lease option, but I don't have that information in front of me. And I'd have to check with our supply chain if we're able to share it or not. Usually pricing information, they don't want us to be kind of sharing that out to a group because they want to give different pricing to different groups. So I'll have to check. Okay.
Yeah, I think in my discussions with the local supplier for the e-Canter in BC, it's going to be a lease option for the first 2 years with the possibility to purchase on that third year. The next question is for all the speakers. What are the different charging patterns and needs for medium and heavy duty ZEB compared to passenger ZEB charging? I don't know, Evan, if you want to speak to that first.
Well, so I would be able to, yet we haven't purchased any of the medium and heavy duty vehicles. So I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Amy, any insight?
Yeah, for us, our vehicle fleet is really, our primary hours are kind of from 7 till 5, I guess. And then we do operate some groups, like our sanitation group goes 24 hours. So it just depends on the application for medium and heavy duty. We've had one e-Canter in the fleet for a period of time, or no, sorry, that was a BYD sanitation vehicle. And that was operated on a 20-hour shift, and it did operate fine. So we just had that for a short-term demo period. So yeah, I don't think we have enough experience to say yet, but across our operation, because there's so many different applications, we're not totally sure of the utilization patterns as of yet.
Yep.
I can answer that a little bit. So obviously the charging needs are higher because the batteries are bigger in all of these vehicles. I will say that for example, the school buses, some of the electric school buses I showed, essentially charge on a higher level too. So just the amperage of the unit is higher. So it charges at a like a 7 kilowatt rate. The BYD trucks, medium and heavy duty, are provided with chargers that come along with the vehicles, and those are BYD proprietary sort of chargers that come along, and they are, depending on your needs, they can be they sort of provide a 1x, 2x, 3x depending on what you need exactly. The larger question, I think, is the question that groups are working, or the industry is working on standardizing. The charging has not been standardized yet, the charging requirements for medium heavy duty, and that is something that I think we all have to get involved and provide information as the market develops right now.
Thanks, Yasna. Question for all the speakers. Are there any fire trucks, electric fire trucks on the horizon?
For Vancouver, we haven't looked at electric options yet. We've added auxiliary power units to our trucks so that they could operate auxiliary equipment off of those units and run their chassis less. Our fire department is fairly specific about the vehicle chassis that they would like. So I think it's going to be a bit of a longer transition there. Our corporate leadership team, our city manager, is very much pushing us to go in that direction. So I think there will be more emphasis on doing demos and trialing that technology as it becomes available.
Yeah, similar with the state of California, we have for our light duty mandate right now, there's a specific carve out for public safety and special performance, so law enforcement or emergency response vehicles. In addition, our fire department is the California Department of Fire and Forestry, and they respond statewide to fires and incidents. So the use of an electric vehicle is unlikely for them. However, we will as the market expands, we will continue to try and push electric vehicles out into the fleet where we can.
Thanks. Follow-up question for Evan. You kind of already touched upon this, but how did you address charging infrastructure challenges and forecast adoption rates to fund and determine where to install?
Sure. So infrastructure, quite honestly, has been one of the biggest challenges with the deployment of these vehicles, and particularly in government owned facilities where any kind of significant upgrade to the infrastructure, electrical infrastructure there, triggers public works requirements. So that has absolutely been a challenge. One of the things that we've done within the state of California just recently is we've set up here at DGS, within our Office of Sustainability, we've set up an office or a program specifically dedicated to working with state agencies to deploy the appropriate amount of charging infrastructure to meet their current as well as future ZEV needs. So we required every state department to put together a ZEV, a zero emission vehicle roadmap that outlined all of their facilities, located all of their zero emission vehicles by facility, looked at how much charging infrastructure was there currently to support it, what they anticipated to purchase over the next 5 years. All of those were signed off on by their directors and submitted to our Office of Sustainability. And now that Office of Sustainability has been reaching out to these departments to start on-site assessments and really try and be proactive about deploying infrastructure where it's needed. I would say that we are behind the curve. And we're kind of playing catch up on it right now. However, I feel like we have a very solid handle on what we currently have and what we will need in the future. And we are diligently working towards getting the infrastructure out there to meet that need.
And Amy, do you have any insights on how you guys might plan for charging infrastructure with this recent RFEOI?
So yeah, we did ask for information about what charging infrastructure would be required for the vehicles that were being provided. And then you will see in coming out, I'm not sure if it's out today or in the next week, another procurement event for electrical engineering design support to help us make sure that we have our systems set up properly to support these vehicles. And it's really going to be site specific. We're also looking at it in the public realm as well. We have a lot of, we're looking at kind of, it's not specific to fleet, but the charging infrastructure that we're installing citywide, and those the infrastructure related to that on-street infrastructure is very old, so it's quite costly to replace. So there's a lot of work being done to understand that. And we're kind of, when we first started buying EVs, we only had a few, so it didn't have a large impact at our various sites. But now as it's growing, we're really trying to see, okay, well, how are we going to future-proof this going forward? And what do we need to do? So we're actually setting up a larger group in the city. It used to be kind of separated out into kind of a couple of different groups, fleet and sustainability and our streets group. And now we're trying to have it all in one group that will oversee all of the electric vehicle infrastructure. So that's been a bit of a change that's happening right now to try and move us forward and figure out how we're going to get more infrastructure citywide.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, for those that don't know, the City of Vancouver's adopting an EV strategy where there's charging hubs located throughout the city with DC fast charging capabilities as well as level 2. But yeah, no, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No. I just wanted to remind everybody. Yeah, this is kind of the big question that everybody's asking about how do you supply sufficient infrastructure. I wanted to remind folks that to look to your utility. In California, the 3 big investor-owned utilities are getting their pilot programs for medium heavy duty approved, which means they will be rate basing the work they do to provide make readies, which is stubs ready for EVSC deployment at various locations, specifically targeted to medium heavy duty. So that is one example of looking at what the utilities will be providing, whether that's a large utility or your municipal utility, and how you can sort of coordinate with their planning.
Yeah, I absolutely. I can't stress enough how important what Yasna just said is. Prior to going out to utilities in the state of California, we also reached out to NRG EVgo with the NRG settlement money, and one of our state departments, CHP, the Highway Patrol, received, I believe it was around 800 make-ready sites for chargers, completely free of charge, no cost to them. So
I was also going to say too that also looking to other groups that are looking to install infrastructure, like we have TransLink and with their looking at putting new depots in and trying to work together with the utility to see how they can support both needs going forward. So that's another option for people to look at as well.
Okay, so the next question: what barriers or opportunities do the speakers see for bulk purchasing in medium and heavy duty markets?
So I'll jump on this one. A lot greater opportunity, I think, than in the light duty category. Having just tried to work with Yasna on an aggregated light duty zero emission vehicle project, nationwide project, and realizing after talking with the manufacturers that there just really isn't a lot of room for achieving significant discounts and price reductions. And after talking with manufacturers of the medium and heavy duty products that are out there and having them tell us, yes, we do see opportunities, I think if you're going to see aggregated purchasing volume, it's going to be in the medium and heavy duty space right now, since it is new, since there are a lot of smaller manufacturers that would really kind of rely on those larger purchases to decrease their supplier costs to them. So.
Yeah, and I can just support that further just to say, yes, the aggregated bulk purchasing for medium heavy duty will actually make a difference because the volumes that, you know, cities or municipalities or states can aggregate will make a difference for the volumes that these suppliers and OEMs sell. They make less of a difference, unfortunately, in the car market where it's the individual owners and the public at large that is the prime target. So I encourage everybody to think along those lines, and obviously both Oregon and now California are looking to do something like that in the bus market. I would love to see something as a aggregated purchase on the medium heavy duty truck market for sure.
Yep.
Next question, what are the maintenance issues with medium and heavy duty vehicles, and are your mechanics trained for this?
Maybe I'll take that one. So for Vancouver, we have to outsource a lot of the any of the work on the electric components because our mechanics are not trained for this. So as part of our EV expert panel, we have local educational institutions, UBC, BCIT, to try and work together to establish some of these programs. And when we're talking about bulk buying of vehicles, we're also thinking about working together as a group to try and establish these training programs so that if all of us can kind of come together and approach the institutions to say we need these courses, it's going to be a much stronger case and less expensive for everyone. So I think that's kind of the next phase as we've kind of ramped up our usage of the light duty vehicles, those as well. We contract a lot of that work out, but we need to be building more of that skill base in-house.
Yeah. And I'm going to echo Amy's comments. Even though we haven't procured these vehicles in the light duty category, we source out pretty much all of our maintenance and repair, except for a few large fleet owning departments out there. We do have quite a few inspectors statewide under me that go out there and look at these vehicles, look at any mechanical issues when they're in a private shop to make sure that we're not being fleeced, basically, in these repair shops. And we've had to send them to these courses to really get up to speed on electric vehicle technology. Also, on the maintenance and repair side, I would suggest, I'm just going to reiterate what I said in my presentation, is look at the manufacturer bidder's kind of service network that they have, and it may be a subcontract or a partnership with the service network, to make sure that there's adequate coverage to meet your service needs if you are kind of contracting this out to other people and you're not doing it in-house.
And just a few words for me. So in principle, electric vehicles have less moving parts, therefore less maintenance on them. And we see that in the light duty as well in the medium heavy duty. Having said that, because these are, complicated vehicles with many different parts, it's that sometimes the door won't close or things that are not related necessarily to the driveline. So that doesn't mean that there's no maintenance at all, but overall less maintenance and less wear and tear on the driveline itself. Good examples. First of all, it's encouraging to see the large OEMs, as hopefully from my slides it came through. It's the large OEMs that are coming through with these vehicles. Therefore, there will be a support network. And then when they're not such large OEMs, there's a good example of the Change vehicle, which has teamed up with Ryder. So then Ryder is the one that is providing all the support and the maintenance backup, which is definitely a good solution.
Mm-hmm.
A question for Amy. What is C40? Amy, you might be on mute. We can't hear you.
Yes, sorry, thank you. So yeah, C40 is a group of cities from around the world that I think there's around 90 cities that are involved, and they are meet regularly to talk about various initiatives to advance or impact climate change. So I can send out a link to it, but yeah, they're just a group of cities all around the world that are interested in improving climate and health of the citizens of the world. So. And it's cities basically.
And another question for you. While it has just been an RFEOI so far, in the future, do you think there might be possibility for joint procurement with other municipalities using Vancouver tenders?
Yes, so as I mentioned before, we just did this municipal buyers group for fuel, which we have been doing. I think this is probably the third round, and it's over 70 municipalities that buy fuel off this contract, and we're the lead agency on it. So with this RFEOI, we are going to be talking to vendors about what the options are to have other people buy off these contracts and see what their interest is. So it is something we've been approached by other municipalities on, and it is something that we'd like to pursue.
Okay. And the last question before we wrap up for all the speakers: what medium and heavy duty vehicles or duty cycles are going to be the most difficult for cities to electrify?
For us right now, it's our snow fleet. So our vehicles that support snow fight, just because if you're running your plow and your salter, when you're running down the street, you're using so much more energy, so the battery will last significantly less. So that's kind of the area that we are being more cautious about proceeding with at this time.
Yasna?
Yeah, overall speaking, I think we've sort of addressed it. You know, the emergency type of vehicles, like I'm all for having an electric fire truck, but emergency vehicles that need to be dispatched who knows where and that provide support to different regions. Diesel fuel is still the fuel of choice for these larger units of sorts that need to be an emergency call. So I think those would be in the category of latecomers.
I would agree with that as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all again for joining, and thank you to the speakers for presenting. This webinar has been recorded. A copy of it will be available on westcoastelectricfleets.com. If you do have any follow-up questions for the speakers, feel free to email us, myself or my colleague, Charlotte Argue. And thank you again. Stay tuned for future webinar announcements on the West Coast Electric Fleet site, and join the newsletter if you haven't done so. Thanks again, everyone.